Akadosh Baruch Tov, Chodesh Tov, Masechet Chagigah Kaf Bet Amud Bet. We did yesterday Kaf Bet Amud Aleph. We went ahead, okay, and now we are on Kaf Bet Amud Bet 22b. 22b. We just said, okay, we just said like this. Amru lahem Bet Shammai. So Bet Shammai comes and they told Bet Hillel. Do you remember Bet Hillel comes and they tell them, I don't understand what's going on. How could you tell me that you have this earthenware utensil which is closed, right? And it's going to save everything from tum'ah, but not. So according to Bet Hillel, it saves everything from tum'ah. Ochli, mashkin, begadim, everything. But according to Bet Shammai, the ochli and mashkin was teorim, but everything else, begadim, etzim, everything else was going to be tameh. So says Bet Hillel to Bet Shammai, what's going on? How could that be? Like what? You're splitting it into two. It's either all or none. So says Zamrula and Bet Shammai, when we permitted the food and the drinks inside of this earthenware utensil, we permitted it only for the Ama'aretz. Why? Because we know that the Chaverim, the Talmidei Chachamim, they segregate themselves from Ama'aretzot. They don't want the Ama'aretzot. Aval nitaheret akli shetarato lechavelo. She says, one second. But if you're now also going to come and say that even the keli, right, which is inside of it, is also tahor. So therefore, it's going to be tahor also for the ma'aretz and also for the chaver, because we are going to suspect that maybe the Israel chaver will, maybe the chaver will come and borrow kelim from the ma'aretz, and then he's going to use it. So therefore, since also the chaverim use it, we don't want to do that. So therefore, they made a special gezerah on the utensils, but not on the food, because the food was for himself, but utensils were for other people. This is where we're starting today, where it is Kavbet Amud Bet, Tanya, second line in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in a Braita. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua, says Rabbi Yehoshua, Boshni midivrechem Bet Shammai. He says, I am embarrassed from the words of Bet Shammai. What does that mean? He says, right, basically what he's trying to say is that he's embarrassed from even the words, right, of Bet Shammai. Why? Because it doesn't appear proper at all. What's the case? The case is when you have a binyan, okay, you have a building that it has on the first floor a deceased person, a met. So yeshcha met, right, bekoma rishona, and you have a window, yeah, aruba, that's in the tikra to the koma shniya. So that means you've got a window between connecting the first floor and the second floor. Okay, there's a window. Okay. Now, the window is going to be closed with a kli cheretz of an ama'aretz, which is placed where the back part is towards the bottom, okay? Which means that if it's going to be tahor, it's going to be a chatzitza because of the tum'ah, that it's not going to let it go by. Because remember, kli cheretz is only mitamim b'ifnim, not b'chutz, on the inside, not on the outside. Now, ve'efshar sheisha lasha bareva, are you going to tell me now that it could be that a woman, she's on the second floor, and she's actually making the dough, okay? She's kneading a dough, right? In a kli etz, which that's where they do it, in a kneading bowl. Isha va'areva teme'in shiv'ah. You're going to tell me then that the woman and the utensil is going to be tameh, tumat shiva, ubatzek is going to be tahor. How could that be? Because you just told me that a kli cheretz of an ama'aretz is a chotzetz bifnei tumah only to do with the foods. So the food that she's kneading is tahor, because you just said it's going to be for the food, but it's not for the human or for the utensils. So therefore, the woman and the areva, the woman in the utensil, yeah, you're looking up, yeah. The woman in the utensil is what? The woman in the utensil is going to be tameh, and the food is going to be tahor. How does it make sense?
But this wood.
How does that make sense? At the end of the day, it does not make sense. Says, I'm embarrassed of your words, Bet Shammai. Why? Because he says, if Shari Isha Lasha Bareva, a woman is coming and she's kneading on the second floor with this areva, with this utensil, it's usually made out of etz, right? That it has a betzek. It's not out of cheres, because if it would be cheres, it would also be tahor, right? Isha v'areva temein shiv'ah. The woman and the areva and the utensil, the kneading utensil, is going to be tameh. Shiva yamim, remember, Kimat Met is 7 days, and then you come, how do you know 7 days? Because the mechatat. The mechatat was the day 3, day 7. They sprinkle the paraduma water, right, on the human being to purify him. So it's too much shiva. Are you going to tell me that the woman in the areva to be in shiva and the batzek is going to be tahor? It doesn't make sense. The food is tahor, but the woman and the utensil are tameim, right? Or he comes and he says login, right? It's a kli kibul. Remember, the log is a measurement of units of water, of like milliliters of liters. Remember, when we call a revi'it, it's always revi'it of a log. So one revi'it of a log is either 86 cc or 150 cc. So one log is times 4 because it's a revi'it. Revi'it is a ravia, a quarter of a log. So one full log, if you just want to do it chazonish, it's the easiest thing, it's 600 milliliters. So 600 cc. Okay, that's one log. So the log was the name of a utensil used for measuring. Okay, and it's made out of metal. Male mashkin, you've got that it's full of liquid. Okay, so login, the actual utensil is going to be tameh tumat shiva and the mashkin teorim. So what does that mean? Another case. Not only did you have the case of the woman, right, with the kneading and everything. You have another case. I've got this cup. This cup is called a log cup, right? It's far from it, but no, maybe 600 milliliters. No, I don't think so. No, nothing closer. But okay, yeah, there's 300 milliliters. Okay, so okay, fine. You've got this log, which is the 600 milliliters. So now you're going to tell me the cup, which is made out of metal, is going to be tameh, but the liquid, which is inside, is going to be tahor. Where does the logic come from? That's what he's saying. I don't understand what's going on. All of a sudden, one of the students of Bet Shammai, they come to Rabbi Yoshua, and he told Rabbi Yoshua, Omer lecha ta'aman shel Bet Shammai. You want me to tell you the real reason of Bet Shammai? So Amarlo, he said, Emor b'chavod. Tell me, what's the reasoning of Bet Shammai? So Amarlo, he said, Kli tameh chotzetz or eno chotzetz? He asks him now, 1 second. What happens if the kli is already tameh? Is it a chatzitza or is it not a chatzitza? Because remember, until now we're talking about a kli tahor. But what happens if it's a kli tameh? So Amarlo, he says, eno chotzetz. It means even according to us, if the kli is tameh, there's no chatzitza. It's only if it's tahor and it's on the backside of the cheres, it's going to be a chatzitza. But if it's kli tameh, right, it's not going to be a chatzitza. So he says, keli shel ha'ma'aretz tameh or tahor. The kelim of the ma'aretz, is it tameh or tahor? So he comes and he says, Amar lo tameh, it's going to be tameh. So he comes and he says, right, now that we know that it's going to be, that's the reason why it's not going to be chotzetz for Adam and kelim, okay? And therefore he comes and he says, but for ochlim and mashkim, he comes and he says this, ve'im ata omer lo tameh. Now if you're going to come and you're going to tell the ma'aretz that it's tameh, klum mashkiach alecha, he's going to pay attention to you. He's in a ma'aretz. And a ma'aretz, you're going to tell me something's tameh. Does he care? He's going to continue doing everything. He doesn't care. He's an ma'aretz. The law, that not only that, ela im ata omer lo, but if you're going to tell him tameh, omer lecha, he's going to tell you the opposite. Mine is tahor and yours is tameh. You know how the ma'aretz is. You're telling me that my things are not kosher. Mine is kosher, yours is not kosher. Yeah, that is, yeah, exactly. That's the reasoning of Bet Shammai. That they came and they permitted the ochel umashkin in kli cheres because the amaretz is not mekabel mimcha to be metameh otam, because he thinks that really be'emet it's tahor and it's chotzetz. So miyad alach Rabbi Yoshua v'nishtatech al kivrei Bet Shammai, right? He went immediately and bowed down. He went and he bowed down on the keved of Bet Shammai. And he said, Na'aneti lachem, right? I spoke against you guys, things which were not proper. Atzmo Bet Shammai, the bones of Bet Shammai, umas setumot shelachem, right? If this is satum, meaning what you guys said before was satum, that's why I didn't even understand a word what you guys were saying. And this is so beautiful how it was explained, and therefore it's going to be extensive. So imagine something which you actually explained how beautiful it was. Amru, they said, Kol yamav hushcharu shinav impnei taniotav. He started doing so many ta'aniyot, right? Because of what he was said so badly against Bet Shammai that his teeth became blackened because of so many ta'aniyot that he was doing, right? Because, right, that's, I would probably say that's right? No, I think the reason why is because the last time I went to the dentist, they told me that usually when a person has, especially what's the difference between daytime and nighttime. So they told me that the daytime, right? They say that during the daytime, there's a lot of the saliva, but since the person is active, so there's a lot of the phlegm in the saliva, so therefore that actually rinses out a lot of the time. So therefore the bacteria is always having a rinse. But at the nighttime, when a person goes to sleep, so therefore it stays there and therefore it builds up. Am I correct, doctor? And that's what your hygienist told me. Right? So therefore what happened, that's why it's more important that she told me even that the nighttime brushing than even the daytime brushing, right? Yeah, exactly. So what happened is that they came and they said, so therefore maybe the pshat is that when a person does taniyot, since there's nothing, because basically their mouth is always dry, maybe that's why just afterwards will just actually become all black and won't be, right? They won't have the...
Well, they didn't brush much at the time.
Yeah, but the is that when there's going to be a takana, you could fix something, people will listen. If you go to an employee and you tell him you made a mistake, and now Kaddish, he's going to fight you until the end. I didn't make a mistake. But if you show him that there was a mistake, but there's a solution, and it's such an easy solution, that he'll be much more readily accessible. He'll be much more ready to accept it because he could fix it in 2 minutes. There's no problem. So for okay, big deal. I made a mistake, but I can fix it. But when you tell a person that he can't make the mistake anymore, oh, I didn't make a mistake. That's the human being, the nature of a human being. So here it comes Bet Shammai and they say, food and drink and klicheres, that there's no takana. The Amaretz will never listen to you. The fact that the Amaretz will never listen to you, we didn't prohibit it. It's tahor. But in other utensils, whether it's etz or matechet or whatever it is, whether wood or metal, that you have a takana, you can fix it. Put in a mikveh and that's it. You could do teshuvah, you could fix it. Amaretz will listen to you. So therefore, we mean that it's tameh, because they're going to listen to you and then they're going to come and they're going to purify it. That's the musar behind Bet Shammai. But that was the reasoning. Comes Rabbi Yehoshua and he comes and he kisses their feet. He comes to the kever, right? Interesting, by the way, that it says he comes to the kever of Bet Shammai. Who's the kever of Bet Shammai? Bet Shammai was the academy of Bet Shammai. No, so then he went to the kever of Shammai. I don't know what it means. He went to the kever of Bet Shammai. It says here, Bet Shammai, you come to the Rabbi Yehoshua. There's a few generations before Rabbi Yehoshua. Okay, but anyway, one second. However, though, right after the Gemara just brought down the Mishnah and the Braita, it goes back to the original question. However, though we learned in the Mishnah and Taratakli, lecha velo. What does that mean? Even for the Chaverim, which they borrow the utensils from the Amaaretz, almas, you see from here, shalina naihu. What does that mean? That they do borrow kelim from Amaaretz. And we're not going to suspect for Tumah. So therefore, we're still going to ask, why do we do Tevilat Kelim, right? We're saying, why are we doing Tevilat Kelim inside of another Kelim for Terumah, right? We said for Kodesh, can you do Tevilat Kelim one side of another? No. But Tevilat Kelim, right, for Terumah, yes. And we're not going to suspect, right? What was the reasoning why we don't do it? That's one reason. Second reason? Rava, what does Rava say? Gizera, the Gizera because of doing it inside of the opening, small opening. You're on the ball. Yeah? Yeah, without the phone. So he says, so therefore we come and say, we see from here that we do borrow utensils from an Amaretz. We don't suspect for Tumah. So if so, the question is, why do we just say that we do Tevilat Kelim mitoch kelim because of Tumah, and we don't suspect for the Amaretz that they're going to learn from us, because anyway, we don't lend out the Kelim. Here it's Switzerland that they do borrow the Kelim. So what are you talking about? So says the Gemara, no. It's true. We do borrow kelim from the Amaretz. But what do we do when we borrow them? We do Tevilat Kelim. We do Tevilat Kelim already. We make sure. Why? Because, right, we do Tevilat Kelim because maybe Bemet, you're going to be Tameh. So therefore, don't bring. So says the Gemara, if so, so for 1 second. So therefore, again, we're going to go back to what we said, that Bet Hillel could ask a question against Bet Shammai, and they're going to say, 1 second. Right? Even if they are going to borrow a keli from an Amaretz, still, Bet Hillel are going to tell you, when you borrow it, you still do Tevilat Kelim, and we're not going to suspect that the Amaretz is Kli is Tahor. So therefore it says, we're not going to purify the Kelim of an Amaretz only for themselves, not for the Chaverim. You just told me that we wanted to do it just in case, because if somebody's going to borrow a Keli from them, it's not true. Even when you do borrow a Keli from them, you do Tevilat Kelim. So what are you talking about then? So answers the Gemara, Tamemet bae hazah shlishi u'shvi'i umana leshiva yomeh lo moshli. She says no, it's something different. Why? To do it tumat met, you have to do a za'ah of the 3rd day and the 7th day. Remember, that's also a musar. It was told to me, I never saw it inside. My father-in-law, right, Shalita, he told this in the name of the Keren Yehoshua. But this is actually something very beautiful. What is the reason why do we have the concept by Tememet that he has to do a za'ah on the Yom HaShlishi, right, and the Yom HaShevi'i, okay? He says the reason why is because the purification process goes in steps. It goes in hadragot. A person doesn't become pure in one shot. It's a process. Yom HaShlishi and Yom HaShavi'i. And the same thing is when a person's becoming tameh. When a person becomes tameh, that's the person that's actually carrying the waters of the Chatat, he doesn't become tameh in one shot. Also, it's going down. Right? A person doesn't just lose everything in one shot. He goes down by steps. The same thing going up in steps, right? That's people don't borrow a utensil for 7 days, which means if you're going to borrow a utensil and all you have to do is take it to the mikveh, do tevilat kelim, take it out, that you would do. But if you're going to have to borrow a utensil, and then you're going to have to wait 7 days in order to use the utensil, because you had to do the tevilah for the hazah and the shlishi, and then hazah and the shlishi, you don't borrow a utensil for 7 days. It's just too much. So because of that, he comes and he says, we're going to suspect that maybe the amaretz will come and he's going to lend it out to a chaver, and he's going to use a bit tum'ah, and therefore, even though he's going to do the tevilah to the keli, it was tumat met, and tumat met does not help tevilat kelim. You have to do haza'ah on the 3rd day and the 7th day. So the Gemara says, 1 second, that tevilah lo mehem, and amaretz is not believed on tevilat kelim. But Tanya, we learned in a Braita, ne'emanina me'amaretz al tarat tevilat memet, and amaretz is believed on tarat tevilat memet. He is believed on that. So Amar Abaye says, no, lakashya, habe gufo, habe kelav. The Braita that says that amaretz is going to be believed on the tevilah is tevilat gufo. Meaning if an amaretz comes and he tells you that he did tevilah for his body, he's believed. Why? Because he understands that he's tameh. So we know that he's going to come and he's going to be completely tameh. He's going to go down and he's going to be completely purified. But when we're talking about kelim, he's not believed. Why? Because many times people think about it. People, a person could understand that they themselves, they could associate that. They could come and they say, listen, he's tameh, let him wash himself. Why? They could see their body. And they say, you know what? The person, nowadays, especially with bacteria, people could say, their body, yes, but a utensil, tameh, tahor, there's nothing here. So because it doesn't make sense. So because of that, right, even though also the body doesn't make sense, but it's a little bit more than a person could understand. So for on the body, they are believed. But on their utensils, they're not going to be believed. That's the answer of Abaye. Rava comes and he says, Rava Amar, Idi ve'idi bekelav. Really, be'emet, also the Gemara Bav, and also the Braita, we're talking about the kelim of the ma'aretz. We're not talking about the body of the ma'aretz. We're only talking about the kelim. Belakashya. And it's not a question. Ha de Amar, the Braita that says that Amaretz is going to be believed on Tevilah, is he says, Me'olam lo itbalti kli betochi. I never did Tevilat kelim one utensil inside of another utensil. And therefore he's going to be believed. The Ha de Amar in this one is that he's not going to be believed, is he says, Hitbalti, aval lo itbalti bikli shem efiv shulena. He comes and he already said, I did do Tevilah like that, but I didn't do Tevilah with a keli, which has a small mouth. Okay? So one more time. That's the Gemara that Tanya, we also learned in the Braita. Ne'emana ma'aretz lomar, and ma'aretz is believed to say, perot lo uksheru. These perot were never susceptible for tumah, which means that the 7 liquids never came on them willingly, that I wanted the 7 liquids onto them. Remember, for any type of a fruit to become tameh, it first has to become susceptible for tumah. How does it become susceptible for tumah? Yad shachadam, when you have water or any other 7 liquids that they come in contact with these fruits, now it becomes susceptible. So an amaretz is believed to say that it never became susceptible for tumah. But he's not ne'eman lomad perot uksheru avalo nitzmu. But he cannot say that they were hukshar, but not mitameh. Because the second that he says that they were hukshar, he's not believed on the second. Hukshar means that it became susceptible for tumah. That means you had one of the 7 liquids that became in contact with them, and now it could become tameh. The second that he says it could become tameh, I'm not going to believe him that he says it wasn't tameh. If he said it never became susceptible for tumah, I believe it. But the second he says it became susceptible to tumah, but it didn't become tameh, no.
Why,
the second, that's what we just said before, to do with the utensils. Just like, one more time. The second, not that he knows something. Not that he knows something. The second that the amaretz, one more time. If I come and I say I was never part of that class, right? For example, there's a riot. Yeah, there's tons of riots. I come and I say I was not at the riots. So there's no questions. I believe you. But if you're going to say I was at the riot, but I didn't do anything, we don't believe you. Because the second that you were there, that's it. That's it. You're included. You're there. No. So one second. So what happens? The exact same thing happens with the Maharitz. One second. So the exact same thing happens with the Maharitz. Right? What happens with the Maharitz? If right now the Amaretz comes and he said, I never did Tevilat Keli Betoch Keli, he's believed. The second he says, I did do it, but I don't believe the but. The second he says, I did do it, Kaddish. The Vatanya is the exact same thing. Vatanya is the exact same thing. The exact same thing. We're going back on now which answer, not the second answer, Rava. We're going back on Abaye, because remember, Abaye came and he said, when is an Amaretz believed on his body? When is an Amaretz not believed on his kelim? Right? Says, what does it say over there? Yeah? He comes and he says like this. He comes and he says like this. He says, is he going to be believed on his body? But Tanya, we learned in a Braita. When a chaver comes and he's asking to be sprinkled with the waters of the mechatat, we do it immediately. Why? We believe that it already passed the 3 days, right? And today is already the 3 days. And therefore you could do the first hazah. Ama'aretz shebal lehazot, when the Ama'aretz comes and he comes to do the hazah, we have to count for him the shlishi v'shvi, which means he's not believed. And we're going to suspect maybe it wasn't 3 days. And he's coming, keilu ya'anu, it's already 3 days. You understand? So therefore you see from here that he's not believed on his body. Here it's on his body, right? And we don't believe it. If the guy that comes is a Tamil Chacham, right away, shlishi, boom, shlishi. Shvi, shvi, boom. We do the sprinkling, no problem. The second and it's Ama'aretz, I'm going to come and I'm going to start questioning him. When Bemet was it 3 days? When is it 7 days? But we're not going to believe him. So if you see from here against the Baye, that even on his body, the Ama'aretz is not Ne'eman. Answers the Gemara, El Amar Abaye, Abaye comes and he says, Mitochomer shichmarta alav betchilato, hekalta alav besofo. He says, no. Because of the chumrah that you placed him at the beginning, meaning at the beginning when he comes to be to do the hazah on him, you were machmir on him, you don't believe him, correct? That's what we said. You're machmir on him, you don't believe him. So therefore, at the end, when he has to do the tevilah in the mikveh after the second time around, I'm going to believe him already. Right? Why? Because since at the beginning we were machmir, for sure now he already did the tevilah and he's going to be believed. Which means like this, one more time. When a person becomes tameh after tumat met, there's a 3-step process. He has to do haza'ah on Yom HaShlishi, haza'ah on Yom HaShevi'i, and tevilah b'mikveh. Okay, he's got sprinkling on day 3, sprinkling on day 7, and mikveh. Says Abaye, the fact that I did not believe the Ama'aretz for the sprinkling, which means I was machmir on him on the beginning process, on day 3 and day 7, but I didn't believe it. I started chokando, I started interrogating the guy. So is it really day 3? When is day 3? When is day 7? When is this? I start, because I don't believe him. So since we were machmir on him in the beginning, at the end process was the tevilah and the mikveh, I was mekel on him. And therefore, I say, he actually went to the mikveh. No problem. He went to the mikveh. I believe him. That's what Abaye says. So he is believed on his body, but only because I was machmir on him in the beginning. Since I was machmir on him in the beginning, so for the end, I was more mekel on him. Okay, which does make sense, meaning that sometimes at the beginning, I'm very struck, but then after that, I already believe you. Why? Because if you already went through the process and I was so harsh on you in the beginning, if you went through it, I already believe that you actually did it. You finished it off. Okay? 2 dots. Until here we're clear? Very good. Says the Gemara. Right? These are the words the Mishnah says, Achoraim betoch. In the Bet Tzvita is for Truma, right? But not for Kodesh. What does that mean? Says the Gemara, My Achoraim betoch. What does it mean, the Achoraim and the Toch? So Tiritznan, it says the answer is a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah in Kelim, Kafei, right? Perek Kafei Mishnah Vav. Kli shenitma achorav b'mashkin. Right? What happens if you have a utensil that it became tameh because of the mashkin? But where did it become tameh the achorav? So achorav tamein, toho, ogno, ozno, right? Viadav tehonim. So basically like this, right? What's happening over here? So one more time. So it says you have a utensil that the outside part, right? Actually does say it here, right? Migabo. That's what it says in the Hebrew. Shenitma chorav v'mashkin tmein, right? That means it be with shenagubo migabo on the outside. So therefore, the outside is tmein. Okay. Toho, the inside of the utensil, or the ear handle, meaning the handle which is made like an ear, or the long handle, which is made like a hand, tehonin, it's all going to be tahor. So imagine you have the same utensil, okay, the exact same utensil. The outside is tameh, inside is tahor. The rim, which that was the sfato, ogno, which is sfato, is going to be tahor. The handle, this type of a handle, it was like, that you hold it like that, is tahor, and the long handle is also tahor. So the only thing which is tameh is the outside of the utensil, okay? Nitzma toho, but if it was the inside that became disqualified, kulo tameh, the entire thing becomes tameh, okay? Everything becomes tameh. Now he says, even though the tumah is only midrabbanan, right? When it becomes, but they were machmirim that the second nitzma toho, they said that it's going to be mitamet kulo, okay? And that's the pshat, achorav and toho, or also the beta tzvita shelo, okay? So now the Gemara is going to say, what is the beta tzvita? So now we're going to explain. Says the Gemara, we're now by the two dots where it says beta tzvita. What is the beta tzvita? My beta tzvita, Amar Avidu Mashmon says Avidu Mashmon, makom shetzovto. What does that mean? It's the chelek of the kli which a person holds in order to pass it to other people, right? That's like, right? That's what? No. So says the Gemara, right? How do we know this also? What is that called? It's like, I don't know, it's not really a handle. It's like something that it's in order to pass over.
By which one hands it to others.
Okay, very good. So says the Gemara, and it also says, Vayitzbot la kali. Lashon of tzevita, right, is something in order to pass to somebody else. So Ravasi comes, right, and he says like this, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Makom shenikieh hadat, right, sovin. What does that mean? We're talking about, right, like this. He comes and he says, Makom shenikieh hadat sovin, which means they're matbilim ochlim, right? They come and they put food in mustard or in vinegar, right? They come and they put it at the bottom, it has a small bet kibul, okay? And that's where they put, so therefore they come and they dip the foods in there. So therefore, stam b'nei adam, they come and they put inside the utensil itself. And then when they want to drink or they want to do anything, nekiyah dad, they're istanis. So therefore, since they're istanis, they don't put the chometz and the chardal in a place where they drink, but rather they put it in a special place in the utensil, which is only for tibul. Which means like this, nowadays, if this person wants to put, dressing, what does he do? He puts it where they eat and drink. So no. Here, nikiyah dad, they're so finicky, they're so, I don't know another word for finicky. Right? They're so delicate, they're so picky. So what do? So, no, I wouldn't call it refined, right? But it's a more, the right? He's very, so therefore what happened? So therefore, this Easternese, he's not going to put it inside there. He's going to put it in a special place just to do the tevila, okay? So Tani Rav Bevai, Kamed Rav Nachman. Rav Bevai came and he taught in front of Rav Nachman. Kol hakelim en lahem achorayim betoch. Echad kodesh kodesh hamikdash, echad kodesh gvul. Do you know that all the utensils, they don't have achorayim betoch, which means they don't have a difference between achorayim betoch, because if it became tameh, everything becomes tameh. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about kodesh hamikdash, which are the kodeshim in the Beit HaMikdash, or kodesh gvul, right? That means all of them, they were machmidim. That means even though usually there's a difference between toch and bifnim, right? The toch and the gabo. Here, there's no difference. It's all the same. So Amalei comes and he says, "Kodshat gvul." What are kodshat gvul? Teruma. Vatran. I thought that we learned in our Mishnah, achoraim v'toch uveto tzvita l'teruma, that there is a difference between achoraim v'toch. So what do you tell me now? There's no difference between the achoraim and the toch. Remember, what does it mean? You're telling me there's no difference between the outside and the inside. For teruma, there is a difference between the outside and the inside. So says the Gemara, Dilma lechulin shenasa. Maybe we're talking about chulin, which was done on Taharat HaKodesh. At the kartan minita. So now you just reminded me of something that Rabbi Baravua said. You remember? There was a machloket between, I think it was Ravada or whatever, that he said there was only 10 cases. Because if you remember, you went and he said there was number 1 and 5 were the same. It was because of Chatzitza. But the second opinion said there's 11 cases in our Mishnah. 11 ma'alot shanuka. Okay? So he says, right, what does it says over here? He says there's 11 cases. Shesh harishonot, the first 6, ben lekodesh, ben shechulin shenasol tarat kodesh, was whether for chulin or for kodesh, for chulin, which was done like kodesh. Acharonot, the last 5 was only for kodesh, but not for chulin shenasol tarot hakodesh. So says the Gemara, right? So therefore, what's going on? It comes out that this ma'ala of achoraim and toch, which is from the first ones in the Mishnah, was whether for kodesh or taharat kodesh. And therefore, according to that, that's why they say that there's no difference between them. But again, it's on a regular. Because regular chulin, there is a difference between toch and gabo, meaning the inside and the outside. But if you take a regular chulin and you started eating it like kodesh, so then there's going to be a difference between them. Okay, 2 dots, right? And this is where we're stopping. It says over here, noseta midras, noseta truma, avalota kodesh. When you're carrying the midras, remember, you're allowed to carry the truma, but not the kodesh. Says the Gemara, kodesh my tamalo. What's the reasoning why it's prohibited to carry the midras, to carry the kodesh, even though he's not actually touching it? Meaning he's carrying it, but he's not actually touching it. Because of the story that happened. It says there was a story of a person that he was transporting a chavit shel yain, a barrel of wine, kodesh mimakom makom, from one place to another place. Kav gimel amud aleph on the top. Now what happened is, imagine, he's carrying it, and all of a sudden his sandal, the shoelace, went and it broke off. Right? Now what happens is, the sandal is a midras of the zav, which is mitamei adam v'kelim. Untala, he took this ritzua, he took this shoelace, v'nichal pi chavit, and he put it on top of the chavit, v'nafla la'avir chavit, and it fell inside of the inside part of the chavit. Okay, v'nitzmet. So now the entire barrel became tameh. And from that time they came and they said, "Hanoseh et midras, noseh et truma v'lo et kodesh." From then on, they said that if you're going to carry the midras, noseh et truma, you carry truma, but you cannot carry the kodesh. And then we're going to ask why about the truma. So that Bezat Hashem will continue to understand.